Hello guys, I welcome all of you to today's Farmcast. Today we'll not discuss 5 drugs of choice guys. Today I'll discuss only one disorder and its drug of choice, but the disease treatment is gonna be more than 5 drugs of choice what we discuss, right? And then we'll discuss few monoclonal antibodies acting on a system, and at last we'll conclude with your questions or doubts that you have asked, right? So let's begin guys with the disorder for today is Parkinson's disease. See, PD Parkinson's disease, if nothing is mentioned, they just ask you which is the drug of choice for PD or which is the best drug for PD. The single best answer would be levodopa. Levodopa would be the single best answer guys, right? But then let me take you through the different strategies of management. See, a patient of PD comes to you and the symptoms are mild. They are not interfering with his quality of life. He is having his normal life with those mild symptoms. And in that case, what you need to do is you need not treat the patient, or if the patient will ask for treatment because he wants some kind of drug, right? Then you'll go for a MAO-B inhibitor, that is selagelin, right? So selagelin would be preferred in initial stage when the symptoms are not bothersome and they're not interfering with his lifestyle much, but still he needs a drug, go for a MAO-B inhibitor like selagelin. But what if the symptoms are severe enough to interfere with his quality of life? Now in that case, the recent guidelines, they choose a drug based upon the age of the patient, right? If it is a patient of less than equal to 65 years, we go for a D2 agonist. D2 agonist like pramipexole would be preferred, right? Whereas if the patient is more than 65 years, in that case we go for levodopa. So this is a new guideline based upon age, right? Why we prefer this is because of different reasons, like say pramipexole, why it is preferred in less than 65 years. See, there are some advantages of pramipexole, that is lesser dyskinesia, right? Dyskinesia. So when a patient develops dyskinesia, it becomes difficult to control those dyskinesia. So in a young patient less than equal to 65 year, I go for pramipexole because it causes lesser dyskinesia. Disadvantage of D2 agonists are side effects which are non-motor side effects like somnolence, impulse control disorder, dizziness. So this somnolence, dizziness can be detrimental in older patients, and that is why more than 65 years I go for levodopa, right? So what is the advantage of levodopa? See, out of all the drugs in PD, it is most effective for motor symptoms, right? But there are disadvantages which I told you recently, that it causes more dyskinesia. That is why we reserve it for treatment of older, more than 65 years. And if a patient develops dyskinesia with levodopa, there are 2 drugs that can be used for treatment. One is amantadine and second is levetiracetam, right? So any one of these 2 can be used. Second, while you are using levodopa, the effect of levodopa, it begins to wean off, and patients, they do have on-off phenomena, right? For this on-off phenomena, then the drug that is most preferred is entacapone. Entacapone, that is COMT inhibitor, is preferred. Though for on-off phenomena, you can also use MAO inhibitor, you can use D2 agonist like pramipexole. And another D2 agonist called as apomorphine is a reserve drug. It is given by subcutaneous route for rescue therapy. Rescue therapy means when nothing else is effective in those cases. So as you can see here, that the treatment of PD is multifaceted, right? Alright guys. Now coming to the second part of the Farmcast, where I discuss some monoclonal antibodies nowadays. And today guys, I'll discuss actually two classes of monoclonal antibodies, but I'm discussing them together because both act on bone. One is denosumab. Guys, denosumab is anti-rank ligand monoclonal antibody, and by inhibiting rank ligand, what it does is it will prevent activation of osteoclasts and there would be no bone resorption. Means denosumab blocks bone resorption by blocking rank ligand, right? Whereas there is a recent class of drug called as romosozumab, ROMOSOZUMAB, And romosozumab, guys, is anti-sclerostin. It blocks sclerostin, and anti-sclerostin monoclonal antibody. And what it does is it prevents the block on bone formation by sclerostin. So in other words, if I block sclerostin, bone formation will increase. So denosumab blocks bone resorption, romosozumab increases bone formation. In other words, romosozumab is an anabolic drug on the bones. So denosumab has been asked a lot of times, guys. Romosozumab, I think, will be asked in your Central Institute exams or INICET. There is a high likelihood of romosozumab being asked in your exams, right? And both these drugs, they have one common use. Both are used for treatment of post-menopausal osteoporosis. Which one? Which are not responding to bisphosphonates. So bisphosphonate resistant or there is intolerance to bisphosphonate or resistance to bisphosphonates. In post-menopausal osteoporosis, we can use either denosumab or romosozumab, right, guys? Alright, so this is our second part of Pharmcast we are done with. Now, guys, coming to the last part where we discuss some of your doubts. Let us begin with your doubts, guys. Alright, so the first query has been asked by Durga Rao Badisa. So Durga Rao is asking, sir, I'm a final year student. My aim is to crack INI exam. Please guide me how to prepare. See, the INI exam, if I compare with your NEET exam, the only difference is the question pattern. In INI CET exam, you will have multiple options correct, right? So the only thing you need to change is you need to practice the recently concluded 2 years AIMS exam questions where multiple options were correct, plus last 10-year PGI questions where multiple options are correct in PGI, as all of you know, right? So add on that to your list of preparation. Apart from that, you need not do anything unusual for the INI CET exam. It is just like the NEET exam, and NEET exam, the level they have increased drastically, and it is equivalent to the Central Institute exams nowadays. Nevertheless, in Central Institute exams, something they focus more is on the new treatment guidelines and new drugs, etc. they are asked. And going forward, I guess, guys, for your INI CET and NEET exam, there will be questions on COVID-19. So make sure you know everything about COVID-19. That is, if you'll ask me what they're going to ask in COVID-19, mostly they'll ask you about microbiology, and second about the medical management, and third about the radiological findings. Pharmacology, they would not be asking you much because whatever we have in COVID-19, everything is just trial and error drugs, and some of them they have turned out to be just fluke, because it is not that easy to get a drug for a disease with 1 month, 2 months or 6 months. It takes years. It takes years to do R&D and to find a molecule. Then it takes many years, more than a decade, to establish efficacy, safety. So you understand, right? So this is not that easy. And targeting a virus is always more difficult than targeting a bacteria. So mostly that would be asked. So that is what you need to focus, Durga Rao. Other than that, make sure you know all the images. And when I say all the images, not just the finding in the images, you should know the clinical or theoretical part along with the images. So whenever you go through any image, you should know the theory part as well that is related to the images. So these are the few things you need to do. And previously there was a little bit difference when you used to prepare for different exams like PGI, JIPMER, AIMS. And that's a good thing that you have one exam, so you don't have to bang your head with multiple types of questions, right? Alright, Sunaina Sheikh is asking, sir, I have a habit of sleeping in the afternoon. If I don't sleep, I have headache and cannot study in the evening, sir. Is it okay to sleep, or I'm wasting time sleeping? Sunaina Sheikh, I will tell you, we all human beings are different, right? And we all have different abilities and capabilities. Now, if you'll ask me, I was mostly like a night rider. Night rider means I prefer to study at night. I mean, not now, but I used to prefer to study at night while I was preparing for the competitive exam, because I need to be alone. I need calmness, and I hate the noises and etc. And the thing only I could get after 10 o'clock. So I would study at night till 3 4 o'clock, right? So that was my schedule. And some would criticize because it is not good to be awake at night, and I can understand. But the thing is that my productivity was at its peak at the night time. So I was like that, but I had to change my routine 1 month before the exam, because the exam was gonna be in the morning. So I had to change my biorhythm. So that was the difficult part of it. But by then I had finished most of the revision, and so it is okay. So what I mean to say is, if you feel good after sleeping in the afternoon, it's okay. I mean, it's not a crime. So you can go ahead with your schedule and do whatever fits. And another thing is, do not count the number of hours. Like, so someone is studying 10 hours and you are studying 8 hours. It does not mean that you are missing out on something. Actually, what means is, what is the productive number of hours. So suppose you sit for 10 hours, and for out of those 10 hours, 2 hours you will be feeling dizzy. Then it's better to sleep for those 2 hours and have a productive 8 hours. Are you getting my point? So it's absolutely fine. Next doubt has been asked by Arjit Bansal. So Arjit Bansal is asking, sir, what to do when I get zoned out? Nothing enters inside my mind even after taking a break. See, Arjit, I can understand what you are getting at. At times you are just off the radar and you are not able to engage in active study, right? So actively you are not able to do something. So I would suggest the best thing to do here is to go for something passive. So you don't study yourself, let anybody else teach you, right? So one thing you can do is you can go for some group discussions, you can do that. Otherwise, you can just open, for example, the TND videos, test and discussion videos, and sit for 1 hour and watch a TND video or image-based discussion video. Or if you're in the mood, you can try and solve some modules as well, right? So guys, that is the reason why I tell you, right? You need to make your timetable in such a way that it is not depressing and it is not demanding too much. What I mean to say is, study 3 hours of your notes, then solve 1 hour's question, then 3 hour notes, 1 hour question. So you need to make it entertaining, right? Change from notes to questions and then notes, Q bank, so that you can get going, guys, right? All right. Next doubt has been asked by Azan Sheikh. Azan is asking, sir, my college has low load of patients and I'm not so much exposed to the clinical cases. Will it be a disadvantage for me compared to others who have better exposure, as the next exam trend is going to be more clinical oriented? Azan, frankly speaking, I'll tell you, now, this is something usually it is always desirable to be in a college which has good academics and a patient load, but it absolutely does not mean that being from a peripheral college or even being a foreign medical graduate or whichever part of this world or whichever part of India, no matter how remote medical college you have studied, it does not matter that you cannot perform, right, in these exams, competitive exams, or be it next exam. Though it is true, you might have to work a little bit harder. But see, you would have seen that even in good colleges, not everybody is at par with each other, right? So it depends how much sincere you are with your work. So even if there is not much patient load, it does not matter, right? You must be having the basic patients. They are always there. So you need not go and see how right we operate in the cath lab or how we do a neurosurgery. No, that is not important. You need to see the basic disorders. They do not expect from you something super duper, right? So they expect from you that how to diagnose a myasthenia gravis, which drug is used, or what are the symptoms of myasthenia gravis. So you must be having these patients of myasthenia gravis, or a patient of typhoid, or a patient of malaria, right? So it's not gonna make that much difference. So the only thing, Azan's sake, I always mention all of you that always believe in yourself, right? If you have faith, if you have belief in yourself that I can do this, 99% of chances are that you'll be able to do it, right? So never stop believing in yourself, no matter where do you belong to, right? All right, coming to the next doubt, it has been asked by Blossom Wings. That's an interesting name. So Blossom. So he's a very lengthy doubt. So I'll try to summarize it. And so Blossom has been suffering from depression. He's on SSRIs, and because of that, he's behind others. And he's asking me what to do. Number one is asking, should I leave it for this year, and should I appear next year, or should I appear for this year as well? See, Blossom, there is always hope. There is always hope, and it depends upon at what stage of preparation you are. So there is still time, and there is still time to extract at least some kind of rank for you. And even if you don't get an MD or MS seat, you can go for a DNB seat as well. DNB passing rate is going up, and it is just right. We all have made a kind of stigma that DNB is not good. DNB is equally good, right? There is nothing wrong in it, and that is the reason why I would advise you to continue your preparation. If you had not been able to do some subjects, then I would advise don't waste your time now on videos and Q banks, because the time is gone. So for those subjects where you had not been able to do the theory part, just try to solve the questions and go through the explanations. So look at the time you have, make a strategy, what is the best you can do at this time, and go for the kill. Who knows, you might get something ranked like 3000 or under 4000, and you might get a good seat of your choice as well. So never count yourself out, right? Give the fight till the last moment. Alright, Vaishnavi Sai, sir, sometimes I feel like I'm reading a subject for the first time, though it is my revision, and it is getting me down. What to do? See, it happens especially for those subjects which you started in the first place, maybe in the month of Jan, Feb or March in 2020, right? Now coming here, you might feel, looking at those notes, if you have written those notes or not. So that's kind of feeling you get, but you need that is the reason why, guys, I always ask you for some subjects which are volatile ones to read, study and revise simultaneously. So Vaishnavi, for those subjects, it must not be for all the subjects. For some subjects where you're feeling like this, you can try to segregate, right? Don't go for bolus revision. Try to divide that subject into many days, and suppose there is one X subject which you are feeling very difficult to revise even. So just segregate it for many days, like 30-40 days, and revise 1 hour a day, right? You cannot do it for all subjects. For at least 1 or 2 subjects which you're facing most difficulty, you can do that. Otherwise, this is a feeling many of you will be having, and we cannot do anything about it, but just to hold yourself in these difficult times and keep revising. Mind you, these last few months right before the exam, these are going to be very difficult, guys, and this will test your mettle. What are you made up of, right? The pressure would be enormous, because you have to cover a mountain of a course in a very less possible time, and it's not an easy job. It's a very difficult job. But then if it would have been easy job, everybody would end up with a seat. That does not happen, right? So who among you are going to be selected? It depends upon how you hold yourself together in these difficult times. There will be problems, but you need to find solutions to those, right? And keep marching ahead. Next, Shravya Blossom is asking, so due to lack of time, I started my prep very late. If I want to leave a subject or two, is it okay? Shravya, see, you cannot leave even one subject. You cannot leave, for simple reason, it's a competitive exam, right? And even 1 mark can make a huge difference, right? You can be within or out of those ranks. And so if you're not able to finish a subject or two, you cannot just leave them altogether. You should at least do the questions from the Q bank, or at least solve the questions, previous year questions. At least do something, right? You cannot just wipe 1 or 2 subjects out, because that means you are making yourself out of the competition automatically, because you're fighting with guys who had been studying 19 subjects, and they would have invented a 20th subject as well in this time, right? So you cannot do that. Shravya, I'm so sorry, you cannot do that. At least do the questions before you go to the exams. Right, Mohammed Sohail is asking a pharma question. Sir, what is the drug of choice for cholera in adults, children, pregnancy? See, cholera in adults, doxycycline, children, pregnancy, azithromycin. Alright, next doubt is asked by Kamluddin Mullah, and Kamluddin is asking, sir, I'm just near to complete my first revision. How should I revise all subject before INICET once again? Only notes for revision or theory plus Mero QBank? See, if you are that serious about INICET, then you have to revise your notes, and QBank. See, do questions. Do not give yourself a target that I have to do this many questions. See how many hours you can dedicate yourself every day to solving questions, because every day solving questions is important, because your exam is MCQ based, right? So if you have 10 hours and you want to revise 8 hours a day your notes, then give 2 hours to questions and solve questions, because solving question is also an important part, guys. And if you're going for INICET, try to solve the previous year AIMS question, which are the multiple options, and try to solve at least 5 to 10 years of PGI question, the multiple options, right? Alright guys, next Dr. Dopamine. Dr. Dopamine is asking, sir, I have done only 9.5 subjects first reading. So first reading only 9.5. Please give a rough idea on how to proceed. So Dr. Dopamine, out of 19 subjects, you have done only 9.5 subjects, that too first reading. And I fear the time is so less that investing now, at your situation, investing more on the notes and videos won't give you that much output, because you would not have virtually any time to revise. So I would advise, for the remaining subjects, you should go for the QBank. Just solve the questions, go through these explanations, and wherever you find some important information, make small notes out of those. So this will limit the amount of data that you need to process through your brain, and at the same time it will give you at least some chance, right? The reason being, you'll be solving these questions and some would be repeated, some points would be repeated from the explanation. So see, there is always a chance. I'm not saying that you have missed the competition. You're still in the competition pretty much, but it depends how you prioritize now with the lesser time remaining, how you utilize that. So I would advise you to devote all your time to QBank and explanation now. Arun K, the next doubt is by Arun K. Arun K is asking, sir, I hope you are doing good. Yeah, I'm good, except that I'm having some fever today. So you might kind of see my voice is on the heavier side today. And that fever is not because of COVID, don't worry. This fever is because of some kind of myositis I'm having in the back. So I must have pulled some muscle or something, because I work out and I don't know, I've done something. And that is why I'm having a little bit fever and all. But I could not miss this Farmcast, because these have become routine of my life nowadays. Alright, so what is his doubt? Arun K is asking, sir, my doubt is which one to prefer, to watch Mero image discussion video now or save it for November or December? See, do not save it that late. What you can do with the Mero image based discussion is take it step by step, like watch half an hour to 1 hour daily. So don't go bolus about it, right? So watch it gradually, so that you can retain. Because if you'll watch it bolus, like suppose there are for example, I'm saying 20 hours of videos, and you'll think that 10 hours a day or 3 or 4 days I'll watch everything. That won't be much productive, guys. That won't be much productive, because your brain would be overcrowded with information. So I'd advise you, maximum 1 to 2 hours a day, right? Minimum 30 minutes to 1 hour. Go through these videos and try to use these videos in between when you are revising your notes, so that it is kind of an entertainment for you. Because when you'll be watching these videos, it is not a kind of an active study, right? You're not trying to memorize something, or because there is a teacher who is trying to teach you, actively he's teaching you, and you're a passive learner here, you're gaining the information. So this will act as a kind of break in between your study hours, so you can do that. So see, we have limited number of hours, but we have to do everything possible to increase our efficacy as much as possible. Right. Alright guys, so Arun K has asked me another question. Sir, why did you choose pharmacology despite getting many clinical subjects? See Arun, me choosing pharmacology was realizing, see, I'll tell you something, guys. more than knowing what you can do, more than that you should know what you cannot do, right. If you'll know that what I cannot do and not venture into that space, you'd always be happier. So while I was doing my job, right, after my internship, I was preparing, but that preparation was kind of fluke, right. I will just attend classes, make notes, but I would never study them. But then I joined as a non-academic junior resident and in the Department of Neurology in the Dr. RML Hospital, and it was a great department. I mean, the workforce were very less, so even as a non-academic JR, I got to learn a lot, right? So I would even see patients in the OPD because the OPD was so overwhelming that it was not possible for 2 or 3 professors and 1 or 2 senior residents to treat those patients, because back then there was no DM neurology in RML, so there were no DM candidates. So even we as junior residents had to see patients, and I realized that after treating those patients in OPD and all, after 6 months of my non-academic junior residentship, I was changing as a person. I was getting more irritated. And I was basically, I started hating myself because I was not the person who I was becoming, right? Because you would just need a small prick to me getting angry. And I realized that this clinical field is changing me. And I didn't want that. And then I collected some money from this junior residency, and then after I left it, I sat and I prepared for pharmacology. Because clinical field, I knew what it would do to me, because I would change as a person. And frankly speaking, sometimes I do realize, because I see sometimes clinicians, they are when they are arrogant or when they are very angry kind of people. So I look at them and I realize that sometimes this is what your job does to you. It's not their fault, but you kind of change as a person. I didn't want that because I'm a very practical person. I'll not run after something because others would say that, see, he's a radiologist, or see, he's a cardiologist. No. Now, even if you don't believe, sometimes people call me a pharmacist. I mean, not knowingly, but MD Pharma, they think that I'm a pharmacist. And I never feel bad about it. Anybody calls me a pharmacist or whatever it is, or a Nakli doctor. My wife calls me a Nakli doctor. I never feel bad about it, because because I'm happy whatever I'm doing. And guys, this is what you need to learn in your life: to embrace something you would enjoy doing, to embrace something, a job which will change you in a good way and not in a bad way. Right. And for me, not picking, like some of my relatives, they criticize me that you did not pick a clinical branch and you are not treating patients. And I tell them a very simple thing: I might not be treating patients, right? If I was a clinician, I would have treated how many patients? 100, 150 patients at max. But I tell them now I'm treating millions of patients per day, and they ask me how? Because I am teaching students and those students are treating patients. So indirectly, I am also treating those patients. So I'm helping. So somebody has to teach pharmacology, right? You'll not learn out of nothing, just like that. So guys, the crux is, it's important in life to know what you want in your life. And if you know that, right, you know that 50% of your problems, they are already solved. Alright guys, so that's all for today. And if you have any doubts, such kind of doubts, you can always let me know in the comment box. I will more than happy to include your doubts in my Pharmcast. So take care. Bye bye. This was Dr. Ranjan with you.